Hello everyone and welcome to my King's Gambit course. This chapter will be dedicated to some rare moves on move 2, which black can sometimes play against you, so let's get started. First of all, I must say you're really not going to see any of these moves too often because some of them are just fancy, some of them are somewhat bad, I would say. But anyway, they exist, and as they say, forewarned is forearmed. Okay, so after f4, what do I want to cover? So, for example, I start with the fancy move f5. I think the great Greco played this in, I believe, 17th century. And this looks like a perfect counter gambit, but in fact, this move is, nearly losing. So we simply take on f5, and our idea is to give check on h5. So black cannot do the same. If they take on f4, we just give a check. And basically, okay, first let's go to the Greco game. He played queen h4 check. But now we just go g3, of course, queen e7, and probably bishop g2. But I'll quickly show you the game by Greco, or I don't know, maybe in some educational purposes. So it was queen h5 check, then white took here. He played, I guess, against an unknown player. Well, I won't make any commentary here, just we quickly go to the end, because I think it was one of the first examples of the smothered mate. I think it says like 1620, yeah, for the 1620 it was probably something new, yeah. So knight g4, and yeah, that's how it finished. Check, 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 and mate. So my advice is not try to not get mated like this. And here, for example, instead of queen h5 check, we can just go and play bishop g2, just develop our pieces. I don't know, e4, knight e2, for example, fg3, we just castle. If black tries to take on h2, we probably go king h1, so our king is safe, and then we just finish development and win the game. This is completely unplayable for black. Another small line here, I mean, it's very small, is queen e7 immediately. Probably this makes a little bit more sense than queen h4 check, but also we just try to play for development. So knight f3. If black would take on f4, we just protect with the bishop and castle. This is also nearly winning, so maybe e4 is the only try to survive. But now we go for knight g5, knight f6, and now bishop e2. That's one of our ideas, to use this diagonal to give this very, very nasty check. So black has to do something like d5, so then they go for a check, king d7, we just castle, play d3, open up the center, and probably win the game in a few moves. Maybe it's not like that much winning, but I don't think anyone wants to play like this as black. Yeah, like king is exposed, being a pawn down, and can't really, coordinate pieces and hold the center. So I think we are done with this fancy move f5. Also, some players tried queen h4 check. This also has, 0 sense, so this is also more for fun. g3, queen goes to e7, and, well, this is actually not as bad as f5, but still white is having some big advantage. So knight c3 is the move. Going for knight d5, black is normally forced to take on f4, and now just d4. So we don't care about any pawns, we just keep on development, keep our development, quick. We take on g3, for example, and okay, let's see d5, trying to strike in the center, bishop f4. So, for example, I don't know, there is bishop e6 move, so if black tries to develop, we can also use rook h2, so now we are going to take on d5, and then rook e2. comes to a brilliant square, protecting the king and attacking opponent's queen. So this is a nice rook lift, and it's very useful in early in many openings. So if d takes e4, then just d5. I don't know, bishop queen d2. We finish our development and we simply crush our opponent in the center, like I don't know, castles. d6 is coming, knight takes e4. So this is obviously okay. We can also consider capturing on c7 at some point. So this is, in my opinion, this is nearly winning for white. But I think if anyone plays like this against us, we should be really happy. So it was bishop e6. Other minor tries, I don't know, c6. But here we just, I don't know, play queen d2, knight f6. And there is a hint. We don't really want to close the center. If we are sure we are far ahead in our development, we just keep the tension. So, okay, basically e5 is also a move. Maybe we win even some tempo here with e5, but castle is much stronger. So after we trade, we just go for d5. So black only developed the queen, and we are ready just to crush them in the center. So king is too weak, d5 is going to be open soon. So it doesn't seem like this game is going to be long as well. All right, so these two moves like f5 and queen h4, I think we are more or less done with them. So for example, there are a few more weird moves like, I don't know, f6, g6, h6, b6, a6, and so on. But I don't think they deserve a separate chapter. So instead, it's just a funny move, which I think some players tried this against me in the internet blitz. I think it was Naroditsky and maybe Hikaru. So this is the move c6. It's actually the possible move if black keeps in mind that they want to transpose to Falkbear countergame it later on. So here white has two ways to handle it. Okay, I would recommend you to play knight f3, but also for those of you who would like to try something new, there is interesting concept playing d3. Just preparing ourselves for taking on e5, so e4 is finally protected. And after we trade and d5, for example, we go something like knight d2, and very likely we're going to castle queenside here, just knight f3, queen e2, castle, and so on. And white has better development, but the position is, I believe, quite playable for both colors. And I think, yeah, Gufeld suddenly played a game like this, but probably he was having fun, yeah. But I have never heard of Gufeld as a King's Gambit player, only as a King's Indian player. All right, so after c6, I'd suggest you to play knight f3, and probably the idea behind this move is to play d5, because of course e4 is objectively a better move, but normally you have no reason to skip the move e takes f4. So knight f3 is anyway something which is going to be played. So maybe d5 is the idea. So if you take now on d5, then e4 seems to be good. But now we take on e5, and I think this breakthrough is not so good in this particular moment. So we take bishop c4, we take on f7. So now black probably has to play knight h6, otherwise its position is nearly lost. Knight c3, and probably here f6, the only move which can I don't know, which can be good here for black. Yeah, at least you're trying to win some material, because otherwise you're going to resign soon. White just plays queen e2, d3, and so on, and our knight is centralized. Black's knight is on h6, and pawn is hanging on e4. So after f6, we have two equally good moves. It's basically a matter of taste. We're going to sacrifice our knight anyway, so we can go like this straight away with d3. Another option is d4. Well, here black probably has to play bishop f5. We just castle, play king h1, and we just enjoy our position. So fe5, we always take with the f pawn, and we open up f file, open up our bishop. So basically, black will try to castle queenside, not to take this knight at all, and we can sooner or later we can trade it on d7. But this is this is not so forced, and I would probably suggest to play d3 here. D3 basically more sound. So now, for example, after knight d7, we always just trade on d7 and win a pawn on e4, and there will be no counterplay at all. So let's say, I don't know, maybe b5, something like this to attack the bishop. I mean, it's hard to give a good advice here for black, because computer somehow shows it's not that lost yet, but I believe the position is really poor, at least from human point of view. So bishop b3, we take on e5, queen h5 check. King should run away, run for his life, and now just f takes e5. So just look at this position, it's so ugly for black, and I mean, I see no point in playing like this as black, but for those who would try this against you, for example, in blitz, then you just punish them with something like e6, then, okay, probably we just prevent, black's bishop from going out. We restrict the bishop, restrict the knight. We're going to win pawn on e4, so if they take here, okay, we can give this check. They can defend with the bishop because of g7 pawn is hanging. Somehow king b7 is also not so good either. But queen d6 is the move, and now queen e4. So we are perfectly centralized. Look at just black's pieces completely discoordinated, and well, I mean, computer actually tries to hold this as black, but I think this doesn't need any further analysis. It's obviously that white is doing fine, and anyway, you spend the rest of the game in some fierce attack, which is surely very cool, especially when you play Gambit and you sacrifice some material and you actually got what you expected. So this is this weird d5 breakthrough after c6. The normal move for black here is e takes f4. So basically, e takes f4 is the best move everywhere. But here, for example, we just go for d4, d5. Somehow e5 is never too good here because black can support the pawn on f4 with g5. So we have to go like something like knight c3, knight f6. And again, if you play e5, then black plays knight h5, which is quite decent to say so. And let's say we take on d5. So this looks more or less like flag bear counter gambit, but it's not so, let's say, it's not completely similar because in counter gambit, black has really a wide choice of continuations, and here black is basically forced if they take on d5. So for example, we take here, we trade, and in general our idea is to trade queens here as well, because d5 is an isolated pawn. It's sooner or later it will become a weakness, and okay, it's placed on the white square, so that's why our bishop will be probably better than black's bishop, so we just go like this. So if black trades, we're happy. If black doesn't trade, for example, here, we just finish our development and go, for example, a3 and bishop d3. And it's really hard for black to find any counterplay. At least our plan is simple, just rook e1, rook f1, knight g5, g4. Something like this will surely work out. And I guess this is just another pleasant position for white. So probably the best move here after e takes d5 is bishop d6. After bishop d6, white probably has to go queen e2 because it's very, very important not to let black make castle quickly in the flag bears. Because this is the key idea, yeah? So if black makes the castle, they can, give away a pawn or two, but they are quick with rook e8 check, and they have perfectly active pieces. But after queen e2 check, we disrupt this coordination. So, for example, Anand played here king f8, but this move is, I don't know, very suspicious. Knight e5, and Anand even went for g5 here, which is nearly losing. Just h4, knight d5. In his game, it was played knight d5 and queen h5. And I think John Nunn played as white, but yeah, he also got some huge advantage, but he failed to convert it. But we can also go for h4, knight d5, and let's say bishop d2, when they make a castle, and then probably we go for something like g3, and then black just resigns. So this is nothing like nothing even close to be playable as black. I think like all lines are exposed, and king is really poor on f8, and black has no counterplay. So this is just a matter of time when white is going to win this. So the normal move here is knight takes d5, but here we take on d5, and probably the only move which could excuse black is queen h4 check. Somehow try to trick white with this check, but there is no need to be brilliant here. We just play queen f2, trade queens, win the pawn back, and I believe this is slightly better for white. So we just go rook d1. Another option is knight g6 check to trade a knight for black's bishop. But in general, yeah, this d5 square remains a weakness, and most likely we will get two bishops advantage. Or we will play like g3 and bishop g2 and so on. And this is, I believe this is something which is just perfectly good for white. And we're not going to deliver a mate anytime soon. But, sometimes a good endgame is very, very decent outcome of the opening. So that's why this move king f8 is not that good. Black should play normally queen e7, and this leads to an equal endgame. We should take probably king takes on e7, but it's slightly more pleasant to play this for white. So bishop c4. Ideally we would like to have two connected pawns, passed pawns on the queen side, but black can play precisely here, like b5, b4. So provoke us for knight e2, and knight takes d5. And here we have different options, but in general, analysis shows that black is going to hold this with precise play. So we can just try some simple measures, win back the pawn, and then we try to assault d5, d5 pawn, also maybe break through with a3 soon enough. And yeah, knight c6, we just trade. Okay, first a3. And now, okay, for example, bishop a6 is good enough to make a draw as black. But also black should be precise. So a takes b4. We trade here, and for example, king d2. Okay, this is a long forced line, so it's not necessarily it's not necessary to follow this line, but it's one of the possible scenarios of the game. Let's say if both sides play good and logical moves. So knight c2, black wins a pawn, rook c6 check, king e7, rook c1, and here rook hc8, and looks like black is going to hold this. And yeah, this endgame probably, or maybe rook takes c8 as well. So this, and this. This is fairly close to a drawish outcome, but I mean, still, it's already moved 23, and I guess there was enough enough space to make mistakes for both sides, but we surely expect some mistakes from black. So this is a quick guideline about c6 moves. So once again, I suggest you to play knight e3 here. And another rare move I'd like to cover in this chapter is knight f6. So knight f6 looks a little bit weird. So black is asking for us to take on e5. So this is probably the only Only case when we really want to take on e5, and we do this. We take, black takes, and knight f3. Obviously protecting from queen h4 check threat. So now black has like 3 moves. I think the worst one is d5. Now we just play. I mean, this is more or less typical trick in such positions. So just pay some attention. d3. We attack the knight once. Knight c5. We keep chasing it. d4. Knight goes away. For example, on e6. Because on e4 it will be attacked again by our bishop and the queen. And now I think we can try c4, but this would lead to some, I don't know, maybe fancy positions with king on f2. So instead, I just suggest you to play knight c3. And I don't think we need any more any more words here to any more moves. So white has slightly better position, space advantage, development advantage. So we put our pieces onto the most optimal squares: e3, d3 for bishops. We castle basically wherever we want, depends on what black does. Queen goes to d2, for example, and then we start playing chess with an optimal piece set up. So that's it about the move d5 in this position, yeah. So just d3, d4. Another move is knight g5, but here, well, black is trying to trade off some pieces, and they end up in the endgame. But once again, King's Gambit is an interesting opening, so we basically try to sacrifice some material, play for attack. But all sorts of endgames are normally good for us, so this one is not an exclusion. Queen h4 check, otherwise white would be nearly winning. So here we have to play queen f2. We trade. So for example, knight c6, c3, d6 takes, and now we just develop pieces. So this structure is very typical, and I mean, it's really pleasant for white. So for example, here, just bishop e2, and now we just wait for what black does, and then we probably go knight e4, knight c4, finish our development, a4, a5, advancing a pawn is never a mistake. So this is typical, let's say, plus equal, and white is just trying to torture opponent as long as possible. And this is a very, very pleasant scenario, I believe. So the move which really has something to do here is bishop e7. I mean, after d4, probably black wants to play d5 and win a tempi. And this is also possible. So d4 is one of the ways. d5, we just take en passant. Well, this is all right for white. Then just castle. This is also all right. This is funny because this is a well-known Petrov position, but pawns on f2 and c7 are still on the board in the Petrov defense, but here it's a little bit different. I'm not sure if it's really favors white or black, but this is a pretty normal position. But I would still suggest you to play d3, win some tempi here instead of d4. So here we go for d4. Black makes a castle, for example, bishop d3, and we are now steering towards black's king. So for example, they trade d6, knight c3. Very, very natural play from white. So probably we want to castle queenside. And black doesn't have a big choice here, obviously. So one move is knight c6. It's important to know that now we play bishop f4 and the pawn is poisoned. You can't take on d4 because now queen e4. We attack both d4 and h7. And now black is really lucky not to lose by force. And here g4, some computer precise moves, and they can pull the game to the very poor endgame. But this is not the way they want to play chess, yeah? So we just castle here, trades. Okay, this line is more or less forced if black doesn't want to resign immediately, so the check comes. And here somehow simply queen f4, yeah, forcing it to the endgame. I don't know. So probably one of our ideas is also to go knight b5 and knight d5. So knight e3 is sort of a try. Rook d1, knight g2, keep chasing white through, but we just take the pawn with a check, and we just protect f4. And looks like we just keep all our ideas. Bishop will probably return to e4 with a tempi. Knight on g2 is poor. King on f8 is also not so safe. And okay, the position is maybe not yet lost for black, but it's surely somewhere close to this point. So I believe, yeah, this is a line you should know when you play bishop f4. So pawn is not hanging at all. So for example, black plays here knight b4. We just castle. So that's more important to keep on, developing pieces. And okay, it's pity we can't keep the bishop, but life is hard sometimes. Bishop f5, and here few interesting moves, yeah, to remember. d6. Now they should take on d6 with the pawn. Rook e3, and now we use the weakness of d5 square. So now knight d5. And somehow this pawn is weak. Our pieces are very well centralized. And for example, in case of rook c8, we can always go like something like c3. So our king is safer, our pieces are placed better, and this is really problematic for black to take care about those two bishops. They are not really so strong. And you can't really take on d4 because of knight e7 check. And then knight takes to knight takes on f5. That's it. So this was about the move knight c6. Probably black can try to play d5 first, d5, knight c6. But here just bishop f4, so it could also transpose from knight c6, bishop f4, d5. So now bishop f4, and yeah, we're going simply to make a castle here. So let's say two moves here, knight d4 and knight b4. Well, knight b4, we just castle. For example, takes. Here, knight d5. The position is really ugly for black. I don't think black is in time to create some counterplay. It's very dangerous. Objectively, I mean, okay, of course it's not lost, but white has a very, very nice plan here, like probably pressing onto the dark squares, maybe marching with the h pawn. So this is just a pleasant choice, I believe. So probably bishop d8 is one of the replies as black, but then I would suggest something like queen e4. So just you may take a look yourself at this position, but I guess you will like it as white. So other move is queen f2. Here bishop g4. Well, this is probably the best bet for black to disrupt our development a little, prevent us from castling queenside. So we have probably to go h3, g4. And here one move is bishop g6. Basically, it's it's all the same. White goes for h4 and try to attack. I think white has some nice initiative. And another move, which is more precise, in my opinion, is bishop h4, eliminating as many pieces as it's possible. Trade down bishops. So after bishops are off the board, another pair of bishops goes away as well. And now when we are a little bit limited in our firepower, so there are not enough pieces to deliver a match quickly, well, here we just make a castle, queen d7. Here white can try e6 as well, but I think h4 is a nice move. So then we play h5 and h6 at some point. Well, the position is objectively closer to equality, but black has to be precise, upon reaching this position and in this position, and in general, even this doesn't look like salvation or something. Yeah, so I still think it's white who is pressing here, and it's surely much easier to play with white. So, well, I think I'm going to round up things now a little bit, because that's it about this chapter, about knight f6, c6, and other rare and fancy moves. I hope this was at least a little bit instructive, and thank you for watching, and see you in the next chapter.